Welcome back to our Reddit World channel. Today we will be looking at
Doctors of Reddit, what is your most awkward experience when dealing with members of the opposite sex? Not suitable for work. We are taught to explain to patients exactly what we are doing. As we are doing it, delicate wording becomes important during female pelvic exams. Instead of "okay, I am going to place the speculum inside now, so you'll just feel some warm pressure," my buddy ended up saying "okay, I'm coming inside you now." The female patient responds, "No thanks, I already have 3 children. My granduncle is a urologist and I got a boner from checking out one of his nurses when I was around 12. I then had to explain why I couldn't drop my trousers for an examination. He asked if I wanted to go to the bathroom to do something about that so we can continue the examination. I had no idea what masturbation was and he explained rather vaguely to me the gist of the operation. I didn't feel like trying it, so we just sort of waited until it went away. I don't know if it was awkward for him, but whenever I think about it I cringe myself into the fetal position until I can block it again. My attending tells me to go examine a patient, her chief complaint being that she was beaten up by her boyfriend. So I go in to see a tall, very attractive blonde sitting there crying. I calm her down and ask her the usual questions, and then I explain to her that I have to examine her from top to bottom to document the injuries. So far, the exam's going well, until it came down to her stomach, then to her waist, then bam. Penis. ... Did not see it coming, at all. I think my shocked expression for a split second caught her off guard, and she says, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I forgot to tell you, I'm transsexual." Yeah, I figured it out. I was the chaperoning nurse, young doc, first week in OB and was seeing early pregnancy PT in triage. Docs usually say, "I'm going to put my hand on your vagina now, or you will feel the speculum on your lips, labia." He was rattled and so nervous he conflagrated them as, "I'm going to put my lips on your vagina now." The patient and I roared with laughter for a second before we controlled ourselves. He shakily kept his dignity and kept right on going like nothing happened. He never referred to it again for the 4 years he was there. When I was 16, I sometimes got dizzy if I stood up really fast. I'm pretty sure this is relatively normal, but my mom thought something was wrong with me. So she took me to the doctor, and he wanted to check for testicular cancer. I had a worried look on my face because I didn't want an old Asian man feeling my nuts. The doctor saw my face and thought it might console me if he spoke teenager. He said in his Asian accent, "I'm gonna feel up your balls." I felt pretty awkward after that. Somewhat related, but from a patient's perspective. When I was in nursing school I went to my school's student health center for a gyno appointment. The doctor asked me if it was alright if a medical student was present. I said that was fine. She then specifies the student was male and asks me if that was still okay. I wasn't totally comfortable with that, but as a nursing student I knew how much it sucks when a patient refuses you, so I said yes. Lo and behold, it was an incredibly attractive student from my school who I bumped into all the time, and he saw the inside of my vagina. I never could look him in the eye after that. General surgeon, 31 years old, female, I work for a county hospital taking care of very salt-of-the-earth patients. These are my people, as I was also born with a plastic spork in my mouth. Talking one morning to a young man who was about to get his inguinal hernia fixed, and his only question to me was, "When can I have sex again?" The only person with him was his girlfriend, who was smoking hot, so I broke him the bad news: "You're gonna wake up feeling like a horse kicked you right square inches the junk." So, go ahead and do what you want when you feel like you want to. But it's not gonna be today. We get him to the OR, put him under general anesthesia, and then a very new, very young, very pretty female nurse starts to prep him. To those unfamiliar, this involves vigorously scrubbing down the groin, including the penis and scrotum, with what amounts to a sponge on a hollow stick that dispenses a compound that decontaminates the skin somewhat. As soon as she starts scrubbing, the patient pops a raging boner. He's completely under and paralyzed, mind you. But the more she cleans, the bigger it gets, and yeah, this kid's a shower, I tell ya what. Poor thing, her face just gets redder and redder, and it gets bigger and bigger. And everyone's giving her shit the whole time. I finally stop her because I'm afraid any second he's gonna break scrub and contaminate my field. O_0. We do our best to drape around all wrong Jeremy. It was hard. My poor, married with kids and straight as far as I know, male resident had to keep batting the damned thing out of our field during the whole case. Afterwards, I made sure to reiterate to the hot girlfriend that he probably wouldn't feel like having sex in the near future. She asked me point blank if it was okay if she blew him, and I told her to go nuts. He asked me the same question when he woke up from anesthesia, and when I gave him the same answer, he gave me a knuckle bump in reply. God, I love county folk. I will preface by saying that the word opposite doesn't quite fit here. Last year one had a transgender patient, FTM, who had completed their transition, hormones and mastectomy only, for now, and had been living as a man for about a year or so. One day he called me and asked if he could have a blood test for HPV. I told him that the only test for HPV was a cervical swab. To be thorough, since he still had a uterus, we could do a pap smear with a swab to check for HPV. He agreed. It was a difficult and painful exam. He'd never borne children while a woman, and the testosterone he was taking made his vaginal canal smaller, drier. Even with the smallest sized speculum, it was very uncomfortable for him to complete the exam. It was awkward for me, not just because of his pain, but because he had been content with his transition and was living happily as a man, and then I had to give him an intrusive, painful reminder that he used to be a woman. It felt like a violation to me, much more so than the usual pap, rectal exam, like I was somehow going against the transition he'd worked so hard for. Of course, to top it all off, the lab lost the HPV sample. We'll have to repeat it again sometime this year. Thankfully, at least he has an amazing attitude despite this. I still feel awful about the whole thing. Not me, but a fellow classmate in medical school. We have mock exams, and various people will sign up to be patients. They get paid a decent amount. So he went in the mock exam room and started the basic history and physical on the fairly attractive female. Did this and that pretty standard stuff, grabbed a tongue depressor and had her open her mouth. Then nothing. He did it again, and said with bewilderment, "That is weird, you do not have a gag reflex." She smiled and gave him a coy wink. He about lost it and couldn't finish. He walks out and finds the preceptor who monitors the exam about rolling on the floor laughing. As for me, I never really had an overly awkward experience other than maybe knowing someone, which can make certain exams a little awkward. Not a doctor. Student rad tech. Had a patient for a regular chest X-ray series, but she was coughing up sputum. I asked her if she wanted a tissue to cough it up into, and she said she didn't spit, she was a swallower, and winked at me. I'm 19. She was 98. Patient here. I was in a small town where my parents used to live and I had to see a gynecologist. I was worried that I may have had a tampon stuck in my vagina. PSA, that's not physically possible, but I didn't know that at the time. Unfortunately, the only doctor I could see was a friend of my parents. After thoroughly probing and peeking, he informed me that there was nothing wrong. In fact, your vagina is, for lack of a better word, gorgeous. I've never been so embarrassed. I had to babysit his kids that weekend. My doctor once said, "You're so thin. It's very easy to palpate your organs." Then he felt my spine from the front. It was awkward. When I was in nursing school, my lab partner was a Kenyan marathon runner. He was so skinny our teacher used him as an example all the time because you could literally see his heart beating through his chest in his intercostal spaces. And where his lungs were a little overdeveloped from running, he could take a deep breath and you could almost see the outline of his liver. He always had to take his shirt off and let people prod and grope him. Can you see my heart beating? Please shut up. Can you see my liver? Goddamn it, it wasn't funny the first time. I had one patient who had made her desire for me very public, but since I treated her entire family, I decided not to kick her out and continue to remain professional. In the midst of a bipolar mania, she kept complaining of female issues. During her pelvic exam, I happened to look up and I saw a gigantic smile on her face. After the exam, in the hallway in front of a few residents, she said, "If you weren't my doctor, I'd fuck your brains out." Perhaps I should have mentioned this earlier, but she was the only woman I've ever met who is a 0-10. She's the only patient who made me question my heterosexuality.
Thanks for watching. Hit the like button and subscribe or you will have a bad dream.